It is now Lima Time, a program designed to promote the transformation of the agricultural sector for improved income, food and nutrition security. Brought to you by the National Agricultural Information Services, NAIS. Stay abreast with the latest appropriate technologies and policies to increase your production and productivity in crop, nutrition, livestock and fisheries. Lima, moving the agriculture sector forward. Pests and diseases have long been a major challenge, leading to reduced yields among farming communities involved in cassava production in Zambia. Among the diseases affecting the cassava crop are cassava mosaic disease, CMD, and cassava brown streak disease, CBSD. The pressure from these diseases remains persistent, resulting in sustained low yields. This issue is largely due to the failure to implement key disease management strategies, such as limiting human-mediated disease spread, which is worsened by the common practice of exchanging infected cassava planting materials among farmers.
We have found out that the major means of transmission or spread of cassava brown streak disease and cassava mosaic disease is as a result of farmers exchanging among themselves infected cassava planting materials. They share, they give each other. So in that way, basically what they are doing is they are giving each other diseases which they continue to plant. And the problem with these two diseases, these are virus-borne diseases. So when the viruses get into the cassava planting materials, they don't come out, they stay inside the stems. So you cannot use any chemical at all to be able to manage them or control them. So if you plant an infected cassava planting material, you are planting the disease. The other method of spread is the whitefly. So we have a whitefly vector, which is called Bemisia tabaci. It's a white insect. This whitefly, when it sits on a plant which is infected, it will pick that virus or the diseases and transmit them onto another plant which is healthy, which is not infected. So in that way, we have the diseases being spread out by these whiteflies as well.
The spread of these diseases has also been facilitated by a lack of awareness about them within farming communities, posing a considerable challenge to cassava production. This, in turn, threatens farmers' livelihoods and food security, especially in regions severely affected by these diseases. To combat the spread of CBSD and CMD, the Ministry of Agriculture, through the Zambia Agricultural Research Institute, ZARI, has implemented a project titled Technical Support and Interventions towards Mitigating the Impact of Cassava Brown Streak and Mosaic Disease in Zambia, TCP 3904. This 2-year project, funded by the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, is being implemented in the Kaputa and Chienge districts in Zambia's northern region.
The project came about as a result of so many complaints that were coming from our farmers' fields. And the complaints were that cassava is being affected by rotting of the cassava, farmers going to the fields, and then they are seeing a lot of rotting. And so, in a small way, we had to do a quick survey to check what the farmers are complaining about. And then we realized that the biggest problem that they are having is basically cassava mosaic disease. And then later on, it was found that in the areas in Kaputa and Chienge districts, they had cassava brown streak disease. All along, we've been having cassava mosaic disease. Recently, as far back as 2018, cassava brown streak disease was detected. Now, cassava mosaic disease, basically what it does is it reduces the yield of the cassava. Now, cassava brown streak disease, it does not just reduce the yield, but it makes the cassava roots to rot. And so, we requested for some support from the Food and Agriculture Organization. So the Food and Agriculture Organization gave us $200,000 US to be able to intervene and try to see if we can assist these farmers.
To combat CBSD and CMD, the project has supported and distributed disease-free planting materials to 1,000 selected cassava farmers. The goal is to reach approximately 10,000 farmers in the Kaputa and Chienge districts.
To start with, to be able to contain these diseases, we had to earmark to target 1,000 farmers, 500 in Kaputa district, 500 in Chienge district, to provide them with disease-free cassava planting materials. Now, with this, the intention was that we'll try to reduce the inoculum, because most of the cassava planting materials were infected in the farmers' fields. So, to be able to contain this, we had to start with disease-free cassava planting materials. That was the first objective. The second objective was that we needed to create awareness, train as many farmers to be aware about the cassava mosaic disease and cassava brown streak disease. So our target was about 10,000 farmers that should be directly impacted and reached. We give them even the planting materials.
The project has also established field evaluation trials at 2 hotspot sites for CBSD and CMD in the Chienge and Kaputa districts.
We'll go on and continue sourcing for varieties that have got genetically already genes that are able to resist or tolerate cassava mosaic disease and cassava brown streak disease at the same time. So then we needed to set up trials, and these trials were set up in the hotspot areas of Kaputa and Chienge district, where the diseases are. Cassava brown streak disease is, cassava mosaic disease is. So we needed not to take them to elsewhere where there are no diseases, because then we'll be spreading diseases everywhere.
After 2 years of project implementation, the Ministry of Agriculture requested camp extension officers to conduct a field impact assessment among the farmers who had been trained and supported with disease-free cassava cuttings.
What we did, after 1 year, 2 years, we requested our officers whom we have been cooperating with in the Department of Extension, or extension officers, to do a field impact assessment. Now, this field impact assessment was to allow us to be able to see whether, after distributing these disease-free cassava planting materials to the farmers, and after training them to see how they can be able to grow and manage these diseases, and if they follow those guidelines, whether we are going to achieve the target use of over 20 tons per hectare that we targeted. And these farmers were inspected by the camp officers themselves where they belong. A sample was picked. You know, we have 500 farmers, we can't do all the 500 farmers, but we have a statistically representative sample which was sampled, and we dug out the cassava which they had been given. So when this was uprooted and we weighed and evaluated, we found that generally most of the farmers, if you look at Chienge district, on average 25 tons per hectare. In Kaputa, going even above 25 tons, up to 30 tons of cassava yield per hectare was being achieved.
However, the sustainability of cassava production is under threat from various pests and diseases, including cassava brown streak disease, CBSD, and cassava mosaic disease, CMD. These diseases can cause significant yield losses, undermining food security and economic stability in affected regions.
Because of this, cassava production in terms of the area under cultivation continues to expand even here in Zambia. Despite the expansion, however, productivity has remained low and continues to be threatened by several abiotic and biotic stress factors. Among the abiotic factors contributing to the low productivity are diseases, particularly those caused by viruses, namely cassava mosaic disease, cassava brown streak disease, which contribute to annual yield losses due to these diseases of in excess of $100 million per year. In Zambia, data on cassava production and countrywide CMD incidences estimate annual losses due to this particular disease at approximately $51 million US.
Cassava is a staple food crop for many people, providing a vital source of carbohydrates, income, and food security for farming communities. It plays a significant role in several African countries, accounting for 61.1% of the world's production. In Zambia, cassava is the mainstay for approximately 30% of the population.
Cassava, I think, is one of the most important staple crops, to the African context, and more importantly, I think, in this sub-region where we are within Zambia, because cassava accounts for nearly 61% of the world's production and is a mainstay of an estimated 30% of Zambians, because it's a source of livelihoods, but it's also a very important source of food. And I'm alive to the fact that last year, when we were severely hit, by a drought situation as a country, the President of the Republic of Zambia, did put out a charge to those of us in the agricultural sector to ensure that we tap into the potential that drought-resilient crops such as cassava, have in terms of alleviating, the energy gap that we have as a country, but also looking at the potential that cassava could contribute, towards, addressing issues of food security.
Cassava is mainly grown by smallholder farmers in rural areas where it is mostly widely cultivated. In recent years, the utilization and processing of cassava as a raw material has increased, particularly in the manufacturing of various industrial products.
In recent years, utilization and processing of cassava as a raw material has increased, especially it feeding into the manufacturing sector of many industries such as the starch, the beer, the flour, and other bio-based products, including medicines, feed, cosmetics, and biopolymers. So cassava is a very important crop, I believe, because it can remove the pressure, from maize as a primary source of energy in many, value chains and in many subsectors of our country.
To ensure the sustainability of interventions under the project, a training workshop was held at Relaxing Lodge in Nchelenge district. Extension officers from the Ministry of Agriculture were trained in improved methods of cassava production, disease symptom identification, and the management of CBSD and CMD.
As we were distributing the disease-free cassava planting materials, we trained the farmers, we brought the farmers together. But then the specialists, the officers that are on the ground, were not capacitated. And now we are getting towards the second year, the final year end of the project, the funds that were given and the period. So we thought that as we move away, we need to sustain the activities that were started by this project. We needed continuity of the activities, and therefore we had to train the camp extension officers or agriculture extension officers, bring them together so that we give them a full package, the full package which is going to capacitate them, give them the skills, all the skills that they require, such that they should be able to know what are the modern methods of cassava production. They're given the skills of how to be able to identify the cassava pests and diseases, cassava mosaic disease, cassava brown stick disease, and many other diseases on cassava. They should be able to identify them, and they should be able to know how to manage them. They should be able to know how to do a surveillance, so that if they're able to do a surveillance, they're able to collect data that can be used and put in a report, so that they'll go with these skills which skills they should be able to transfer to other officers that could not be able to be at this meeting.
So the first point that we need to consider in cassava production, especially if you have to improve on the yields, we are looking at site selection. Where are we supposed to plant cassava? It's not everywhere that you have to plant cassava. So you need to know the soil type, the type of soil that you are going to plant in your cassava. Cassava grows in the soil, so it requires soils which are loose so that it can develop well in the soil. So you need loose soils. Yes, that's a very important thing. Then you don't need to grow cassava in places which are grassy or which has a lot of weeds, places which are stony. No, cassava won't be able to do well. So that's the first point. Let the farmer know where they're going to grow the cassava. To avoid also issues to do with rotting, cassava doesn't have to be grown in areas which are waterlogged.
However, cassava brown streak disease can lead to significant economic losses and negatively impact cassava production, potentially causing root yield losses of up to 100% in susceptible varieties.
Cassava brown streak disease is quite devastating, particularly on the roots. It causes the roots to rot. And once the roots rot, if the farmers harvest, they cannot do anything with the roots. Neither can they able to feed the animals, particularly the chickens or goats, as it were. The only way is just to throw them, the roots away. And this results in enormous losses. And to identify or to recognize the disease in the farmers' fields, one should look at the leaves. That is the starting point. The cassava that is infected with cassava mosaic disease, on the leaves, they appear distorted. The leaves becomes malformed, especially on the edges. In addition, you see the mosaic with patches of green and yellow. This is the symptoms that the farmers would see. And then for the cassava brown streak disease, the leaf margins are not distorted in any way in comparison to the leaves that are infected with the cassava viruses causing cassava mosaic disease. For the cassava brown streak disease, again, if you look closely on the stems, you see brown streaks. These streaks may appear on the stems, at times they might not, but that's one way of telling whether the disease is there or not. Lastly, the disease also appears on the roots, and that is where the problems are. The disease causes the roots to rot. If you cut a cross-section of the root and see the brown lesions or spots, you see, and if you feel them, you touch them with your fingers, you'll be able to see that those brown lesions or spots are hard.
Over the past few years, Kapota district has been severely affected by the devastating effects of cassava brown streak disease. In response, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit, DMMU, have provided technical support by training agricultural extension officers and farmers in good agricultural practice for cassava production.
With those that were trained, the 1,000, they took the trainings a lot seriously, including practices that they were going to, to apply in the production of the cassava crop. We have seen amongst these trained farmers a serious mindset change in the way they approach, the production of cassava. Previously, we had the tendency of certain practices that were causing injury to the cassava. We had the sharing of cuttings that were diseased, especially that the farmers didn't even know that the cuttings that they were using were diseased. But right now, we have a lot of farmers now that have the know-how. And these same farmers that already are trained are also orienting those that are neighbors to them And so the knowledge has spread, and we have farmers now knowing that they must select the planting materials and they must go for planting materials that are clean.
The Zambia Agricultural Research Institute has shared the successes achieved under the technical support and interventions towards mitigating the impact of cassava brown streak and mosaic disease in Zambia project during its 2 years of implementation.
Over 1,000 farmers, smallholder farmers in particular, and their respective camp extension officers were trained in cassava production methods, pest and disease identification, and seed crop maintenance. In addition, nearly over 11,400 farmers and 89 district staff in 85 agricultural camps were educated on identifying CMD and CBSD symptoms and implementing management strategies to reduce the spread of the disease. The third thing was the improved yields of cassava that have been observed. There has been a notable increase from the previous average of 6 metric tons per hectare to over 20 metric tons per hectare, significantly increasing the food security, including contributing to the livelihoods of the people. The other one is the distribution of over 8,500 disease-free cassava bundles to about 1,000 farmers within the 2 mentioned districts.
Cassava is one of the most climate-resilient crops, and the growing industrial use of cassava in Zambia has generated significant interest from stakeholders and companies looking to produce it on a large scale.
Many stakeholders are increasingly recognizing the value of cassava, as evidenced by the growing interest of various companies and organizations to mass produce the crop. For example, the Zambian breweries, Itabwa Investments, Sunbed International, and many others, to mention but a few. Currently, annual demand for cassava production in Zambia exceeds 100,000 tons per year. If this is to adequately cater for the collective tonnage requirements of the aforementioned stakeholders and others, undoubtedly there is a need, for us to increase or enhance, the productivity.
The Ministry of Agriculture has also sensitized farming communities about the dangers of CBSD and CMD.
We also touched the sensitization part, where we sensitize the community on the use of disease-free cuttings, so that they can't be just getting disease cuttings from anyhow. That's the thing. We have sensitized farmers on that, and also included the village leaders, community leaders. Apart from that, again, we also talked about phytosanitary sensitization, so that at least farmers can be aware.
To ensure sustainability of interventions under the project, the Ministry of Agriculture will facilitate the production of disease-free cassava planting materials through the establishment of seed multiplication fields among farming communities.
So we've had the province making plans to have OFTCs growing seed for cassava, and districts also having some fields where they are going to also grow that seed material. So with the training that we have now, because we are trained now both in seed multiplication and we are also trained in food crop multiplication for cassava. So we are equipped right now to even manage those fields properly. So we are already working on seed multiplication, and it will be from that we are going to sustain the program. So some of our farmers are going to be getting the seeds from those that we are going to be producing.
To control the spread of CBSD and CMD and increase yields, it is essential for farmers to adopt improved agricultural practices, including the use of disease-free cassava cuttings. This will help enhance productivity among cassava farming communities.